The sound echoed through our kitchen before I even felt the sting. In that frozen moment, I watched my children's faces transform. Emma's mouth forming a perfect O of shock. Tyler's eyes widening with a fear I'd never wanted him to know. My husband David's hand was still raised, his wedding ring catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through our kitchen window, the same ring I'd placed on his finger 12 years ago, promising forever. "You're nothing but a pathetic loser," he spat, his voice trembling with a rage I barely recognized. My phone lay face up on our granite countertop, the message that had started it all still glowing on the screen. "I miss feeling your touch. Last night was amazing." The sender's name read Sarah Miller. I didn't know a Sarah Miller, but apparently my husband did. The irony wasn't lost on me, that after 15 years of marriage, it would be a simple text message that would shatter our carefully constructed facade. I'd been making Sunday dinner, just like always. Pot roast in the slow cooker, potatoes browning in the oven. David's phone had buzzed repeatedly while he was in the shower, and I'd done what I'd done 1,000 times before, checked to see if it was important. It was important, all right, just not in the way I'd expected. My cheek throbbed as I stood there, frozen in our kitchen that suddenly felt foreign. The familiar family photos on the walls, beach vacations, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, now seemed like scenes from someone else's life. How many of those smiling moments had been real? How many had been lies? "Mommy?" Emma's small voice broke through the silence. She was only 8, too young to understand the full weight of what she'd just witnessed, but old enough to know something had fundamentally shifted in our family's universe. Tyler, at 12, knew more. I could see it in the way his hands clenched into fists at his sides. His father's son, but in this moment, somehow more of a man than the one who'd just struck me. "Both of you, go to your rooms," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Now." They hesitated, torn between obedience and protection. It was the first time I'd seen that look in their eyes, that terrible adult awareness that sometimes parents need protecting too. "Go!" David's voice boomed, making us all jump. The children scattered, their footsteps thundering up the stairs, but not before I caught Tyler's backward glance. In my son's eyes, I saw a promise, and it broke my heart. No child should ever feel they need to protect their mother from their father. As the sound of closing doors echoed from above, David's rage seemed to deflate, replaced by something almost worse: justification. "If you hadn't been snooping through my phone," he started, running his hands through his still wet hair. "This is your fault. You know that, right? You brought this on yourself." The words hit harder than the slap had, because for a split second, in the deepest, most insecure part of myself, I almost believed him. 15 years of subtle manipulation, of small corrections, of, "I'm only saying this because I love you," had laid that foundation well. But something else was rising in me now, something that had been dormant for too long. Maybe it was seeing my children's faces, maybe it was the sting in my cheek, or maybe it was just that the universe had finally decided I'd had enough. I walked to the sink, turned off the faucet I'd left running, and watched the last soap bubbles swirl down the drain. "How long?" I asked, not turning around. "How long have you been seeing her?" "Don't do this, Catherine." His voice had shifted into the patronizing tone I knew so well. "You're emotional right now. We can talk about this later when you've calmed down." I turned then, meeting his eyes. "How long?" He stared at me, and I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. David had always been good at calculations. It's what made him successful in his investment firm. Right now, he was weighing his options, deciding how much to admit to, how to spin this to his advantage. "It's not what you think," he finally said, taking a step toward me. I took a step back, bumping into the sink. Something flashed in his eyes. Anger? Fear? "Sarah is just a friend, a colleague. You're blowing this out of proportion." But I'd seen that message. Last night was amazing. Last night, when he'd told me he was working late on the Johnson account. Last night, when I'd kept his dinner warm for 2 hours before finally wrapping it up and going to bed alone. Again. The pot roast was starting to smell done. 15 years of Sunday dinners, and suddenly I couldn't bear the thought of sitting across from him, passing the potatoes, pretending everything was normal. Nothing would ever be normal again. "I'm going to check on the children," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Don't follow me." "Catherine." There was a warning in his voice, but I was already moving past him, careful to stay just out of reach. As I climbed the stairs, my legs shaking beneath me, I heard him call out, "Remember everything I've done for you. Everything you'd be losing." I paused on the landing, my hand gripping the banister. Through the window, I could see our perfectly manicured lawn, the expensive cars in the driveway, the life we'd built that looked so perfect from the outside. He was right. I'd be losing a lot. But as I touched my cheek, feeling the heat of his handprint still branded there, I realized I'd already lost something far more valuable. The illusion that love shouldn't hurt. What I didn't know then, as I climbed those stairs to comfort my children, was that the text message was just the beginning. Sarah Miller wasn't just my husband's lover. She was the thread that, when pulled, would unravel a deception so much bigger than a simple affair. But that revelation would have to wait. Right now, I had 2 terrified children to hold, and somewhere in the depths of my soul, a strength to find that I didn't even know I possessed. The sound of David's footsteps pacing the kitchen below carried up through the floorboards, a steady rhythm that had once meant security, but now felt like the ticking of a bomb. As I reached for Emma's doorknob, I heard him answering his phone in hushed, urgent tones. "Sarah? We have a problem." That night, I slept in Emma's room, curled protectively around my daughter's small form. Well, slept isn't quite the right word. I lay awake, listening to the sounds of our house, the familiar creaks and sighs that had once been comforting, but now felt like whispered warnings. David had tried to come up twice, but Tyler had stationed himself in the hallway with his homework, a silent guardian I hadn't asked for, but whose presence made my heart both swell and break. It wasn't until 3 a.m., when I was certain David had finally gone to bed, that I crept downstairs with my phone. My hands trembled as I opened my laptop at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of family meals, where the children had done their homework, where I'd believed we were happy. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, but years of managing our household had given me access to most of our accounts. David had always said I was good with details. It was one of the things he'd first loved about me, or so he'd claimed. Now those detail-oriented eyes scanned credit card statements, phone records, emails. Sarah Miller. The name appeared more times than I could count. Coffee shop charges near David's office, late-night Uber receipts, hotel rooms disguised as business expenses. But something wasn't adding up, literally. The amounts were too large, too frequent, too systematic. My hand flew to my mouth as I noticed a pattern emerging. Regular transfers from our joint account to a business I'd never heard of. Miller Consulting Services. Bi-weekly payments, always the same amount, $25,000. I quickly calculated, over the past year alone, that was over $500,000. "You shouldn't be doing that." I jumped, my heart racing as David's voice cut through the darkness. He stood in the doorway, still wearing his clothes from earlier. Had he been waiting for me to come down? "What is Miller Consulting Services?" My voice was barely a whisper, but the question seemed to fill the entire room. He moved toward the table slowly, deliberately, like a man approaching a frightened animal. "It's complicated, Catherine. Business dealings you wouldn't understand. Try me." I surprised myself with the steel in my voice. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're paying your mistress an awful lot of money from our family account." A shadow crossed his face. Not anger this time, but something else. Fear? "Keep your voice down. You'll wake the children." "The children?" I laughed, a hollow sound that didn't seem to belong to me. "You mean the ones who watched you hit their mother today? Those children?" He sat down across from me, running his hands through his hair. A gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. I shouldn't have done that. I lost my temper. "But you have to understand, Catherine. There are things happening that are bigger than us. Bigger than an affair." "What things?" He reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back, remembering the sting of his palm against my cheek. Something flickered in his eyes. "You need to stop looking into this," he said, his voice low and urgent. "For your own good, for the children's good, just let it go. I'll make it up to you. We can go to counseling, work through this. I'll break it off with Sarah. Just step away from the computer." But I couldn't stop seeing the numbers, the pattern, the systematic bleeding of our family's future. $500,000, David. Where is it going? He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" "From knowing too much." He slammed his hand on the table, making me flinch. Immediately, his expression softened, became almost pleading. "Please, Catherine, trust me one last time. Delete the browser history, close the computer, and go back to bed. We can start fresh tomorrow." I looked at my husband of 15 years, the father of my children, the man I'd built a life with, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "I don't think I can do that." His face hardened. "Then you leave me no choice." Before I could react, he'd grabbed my laptop, snapping it shut. "I'm going to hold on to this for a while. For your own good." "David, enough!" His voice was sharp enough to make me shrink back. "Go to bed, Catherine. Now." I stood on shaky legs, but as I passed him, I paused. "You know what the worst part is? Not the affair, not even the money. It's that you really believe you have the right to control me like this." He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. "Everything I've done for this family. Someday, you'll understand that." I pulled away from him and headed for the stairs, my mind racing. In the dark hallway, I nearly collided with Tyler, who was sitting on the bottom step. "Mom?" His whisper was barely audible. "Are you okay?" I helped him up, guiding him back to his room. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Everything's going to be fine." But as I tucked him back into bed, I knew I was lying. Nothing was fine. And tomorrow, I would have to decide what kind of mother, what kind of woman, I wanted my children to see me be. What David didn't know was that I'd already emailed myself copies of everything I'd found. And I'd seen something else in those financial records. Something I don't think I was supposed to see. A second company name, buried in the transfers. Phoenix Holdings LLC, with a Manhattan address I recognized. It was the building where my sister worked. As I finally crawled back into bed beside Emma, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. I'm not who David told you I am. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., Riverside Park. Come alone. Sarah Miller." I stared at the message until my eyes burned, wondering if I was looking at a lifeline or walking into a trap. Either way, I knew tomorrow would change everything. I just didn't know yet if I would be strong enough to face what was coming. I almost didn't go to Riverside Park. The rational part of my brain screamed that it was foolish to meet my husband's mistress alone, especially after everything that had happened. But as I drove the children to school that morning, ignoring David's insistence that he should take them, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah Miller's message held answers I desperately needed. "Remember what we practiced?" I asked Tyler as he climbed out of the car. He nodded solemnly. "Call Aunt Rachel if anything feels wrong, and don't let Dad pick us up unless you text the special code word." My throat tightened. When had my children become soldiers in a war they shouldn't even know existed? Emma hugged me extra tight, and I caught the scent of her strawberry shampoo, the same brand I'd used at her age. Such a normal detail in a world that had stopped making sense. The park was quiet at 10 a.m. on a Monday. A few joggers, some mothers with strollers, an old man feeding pigeons. I chose a bench with clear sightlines in all directions, another behavior I'd never had to think about before yesterday. My cheek still ached faintly where David had struck me, carefully concealed under makeup I rarely wore. "Catherine?" I turned to find a woman standing behind my bench. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp green eyes and a practical ponytail. She wore a business suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, but her hands were shaking as she clutched a leather portfolio. "Sarah Miller?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. She quickly sat beside me, scanning the park. "We don't have much time. David doesn't know I'm here, and it needs to stay that way." "Why? Because you're sleeping with my husband?" Her laugh was bitter. "Is that what you think? That this is about an affair?" She opened her portfolio and handed me a business card. I'm a forensic accountant with the FBI's white-collar crime division. We've been investigating your husband's firm for the past 18 months. The world tilted sideways. I stared at the card, unable to process what I was hearing. But the text message was calculated to make him show his true colors. We needed to see how he'd react under pressure. She paused, her expression softening. I'm so sorry about what happened. We never expected him to become violent. That wasn't part of the plan. My hands were trembling now. What plan? What's really going on? Sarah, if that was even her real name, pulled out a thick file. Your husband and his partners have been running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme through multiple shell companies. Miller Consulting Services is one of them. Phoenix Holdings is another. They've stolen nearly $40 million from their clients over the past 5 years. That's impossible, I whispered, but even as I said it, pieces started falling into place. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden influx of wealth 2 years ago that David had attributed to smart investments. It gets worse, Sarah continued. We have evidence that your sister Rachel's investment firm has been unknowingly processing some of these transactions. When the scheme collapses, and it will collapse, her firm could be implicated. Unless what? Unless you help us, Catherine. We need someone on the inside, someone who can access documents and communications that we can't get to with a warrant. Someone he trusts. I stood up so quickly I felt dizzy. You want me to spy on my husband? To what? Wear a wire? Plant cameras? Are you insane? We want you to protect yourself and your children, Sarah said quietly. Because when this breaks, and it will break, with or without your help, everything will be frozen. Bank accounts, credit cards, assets, all of it. Do you have any money that's just in your name? The question hit me like a physical blow. No, of course I didn't. David had always handled our finances. It was easier that way, he'd said. Better for tax purposes. I thought of the children, of college funds and future security, all potentially built on stolen money. What about my sister? My voice cracked. Rachel doesn't know anything about this. She can't. Sarah shook her head. We don't think she's involved. But when this comes to light, her career could be over. The investigation alone would destroy her professional reputation, unless we can prove she was an unwitting participant, which is where you could help. A jogger passed close to our bench and Sarah quickly tucked the file away. I have to go. But Catherine, she touched my arm gently. What happened yesterday with David? That's not an isolated incident. Men like him, when they feel their control slipping, it usually gets worse before it gets better. She slipped me a burner phone, small and black. My real number is programmed in it. Think about what I've said. And Catherine, be careful. David may act like he doesn't suspect anything, but he didn't get this far by being careless. As she walked away, another woman took her place on the bench. Middle-aged, unremarkable in her tennis clothes and baseball cap. She didn't look at me as she spoke. Agent Miller is right. I'm David's previous wife. The bruises fade, but his promises don't change. Get out while you still can. Before I could respond, she was gone too, leaving me alone with a burner phone, a business card, and the sickening realization that my entire life might be built on quicksand. My own phone buzzed. A text from David. Where are you? Tried calling the house. We need to talk about last night. I stared at his message, remembering all the times he'd needed to know where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. Control, Sarah had said. It was all about control. Another buzz. The children miss you. Come home and we can work this out. The children. He knew exactly which buttons to push, didn't he? But now those same buttons felt like anchor points, reminding me what I was really fighting for. My fingers hovered over the keypad of the burner phone. The choice seemed impossible. Risk everything by helping the FBI, or risk losing everything by doing nothing. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and my next decision would determine whether I flew or fell. A third message from David. I've ordered your favorite takeout for lunch. Italian. Come home, Bella. All is forgiven. Forgiven. As if I were the one who needed forgiveness. The burner phone felt heavy in my pocket as I started walking toward my car. Behind me, The Hudson River flowed steadily onward, indifferent to the choices facing those on its shores. But, as I reached for my keys, I noticed my hands had stopped shaking. Sometimes the hardest part of fighting back is recognizing that you're in a fight at all. I thought of Emma watching me put on makeup this morning, covering the mark her father had left. What was I teaching her about love, about worth, about the price of silence? I pulled out the burner phone and typed, "I'll help, but I need guarantees about Rachel and my children. Everything I do has to be about protecting them." Sarah's response came quickly. "Meet me tomorrow, same time, different place. And Catherine, delete these messages. Trust no one, not even your sister. Not yet." As I drove home, rehearsing the lie I'd tell David about where I'd been, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow. Scared, yes, but also something else. Something that felt like the beginning of strength. What I didn't know then was that Sarah Miller wasn't telling me everything. The rabbit hole of David's deception went far deeper than even the FBI suspected, and I was about to discover that some truths are better left buried. But that revelation would have to wait, because first, I had to survive dinner with the man who had just become both my husband and my target. The roast chicken was perfect, golden brown, perfectly seasoned, just like my mother had taught me. I'd spent the afternoon cooking, playing the role of repentant wife returning to her domestic duties. David sat at the head of the table, cutting his meat with precise movements, while Emma chatted about her day at school. Tyler pushed his food around his plate, watching his father with wary eyes. "The Carter account closed today," David announced, reaching for his wine glass. "Biggest commission of the quarter." He smiled at me, all charm and warmth, as if the previous day's violence had never happened. "I was thinking we could take that trip to Aspen you've been wanting. Just the two of us." The Carter account. I remembered the name from the files Sarah had shown me. An elderly couple, recently widowed wife, life savings invested with my husband's firm. Life savings that were now probably feeding the Ponzi scheme Sarah had described. I forced a smile. "That sounds lovely, honey." "You're not going anywhere," Tyler muttered, stabbing a piece of chicken. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. David set down his fork. "What did you say, son?" I jumped in quickly. "Tyler has that big soccer tournament coming up, remember? Maybe we could plan the trip for after—" "I asked your son a question, Catherine." David's voice was soft, dangerous. "Tyler?" My 12-year-old son lifted his chin, a gesture so like his father it made my heart ache. "You hurt Mom. I saw the bruise this morning before she covered it up." "Tyler, please," I whispered. But the damage was done. David dabbed his mouth with his napkin, every movement deliberate. "Sometimes, son, adults have disagreements. Your mother and I had a misunderstanding, but we've worked it out. Haven't we, Catherine?" The question hung in the air like a blade. I nodded, hating myself for the lesson I was teaching my children. "Yes, we have. Emma, Tyler, go to your rooms," David said. "Your mother and I need to talk." "No." Tyler's voice cracked on the word. "Now." David's fist came down on the table, making the plates jump. Emma burst into tears. I stood up so quickly my chair fell backward. "Don't you dare frighten them. Kids, go upstairs. It's okay. Everything's okay." After they left, David's mask of civility slipped. "You turned my own son against me. You did that yourself when you hit me." He moved so fast I barely saw it, grabbing my wrist across the table. I apologized for that. "What more do you want from me?" What I wanted was to tell him I knew everything. About the Ponzi scheme, about his ex-wife, about the lives he'd ruined. Instead, I thought of Sarah's warning and forced myself to soften. "I want us to be happy again, like we used to be." His grip loosened. "We can be. Just trust me, Catherine. Stop pushing. Stop questioning everything." Later that night, after David had fallen asleep, I crept down to his home office. The laptop was there, password protected, but I knew what I was looking for. While cooking dinner, I'd noticed his habit of writing down passwords on Post-it notes, sticking them under his desk drawer. Some things never change. The password worked. My hands trembling, I inserted the USB drive Sarah had given me. It looked like a normal flash drive but contained software that would copy his files without leaving a trace. As I waited, I scrolled through his emails, careful not to mark anything as read. That's when I saw it. An email thread with a subject line that made my blood run cold. Rachel Montgomery, leverage options. My sister's name. I clicked it open. She's starting to ask questions about the trading patterns. Might need to implement containment protocol. Family connection makes her dangerous. The response was from someone named Marcus. Understood. I have the photos from her weekend in Miami. If she becomes a problem, we can always remind her how devastating a scandal would be for a female executive in her position. They were planning to blackmail my sister. A floorboard creaked behind me. I whirled around, heart in my throat, but the doorway was empty. Just the house settling, I told myself, though my hands shook as I removed the drive and carefully restored the computer to exactly how I'd found it. Back in bed, I lay awake listening to David's steady breathing, fighting the urge to check the burner phone hidden in my Tampax box. I needed to warn Rachel, to protect her somehow, but Sarah's warning echoed in my head. Trust no one, not even your sister. Not yet. The next morning, as I packed the kids' lunches, David surprised me by coming into the kitchen early. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, nuzzling my neck like he used to do when we were first married. I have a surprise for you. Oh. I called Dr. Stevens, made an appointment for couples counseling. I want to make this work, Catherine. Show you how much you mean to me. My heart stuttered. Dr. Stevens was one of the names in the FBI file, another investor in David's scheme. Which meant either David was setting a trap or... That's wonderful, I managed, turning to kiss him lightly. I want that too. He caught my face in his hands, studying me. You seem different lately. Since that day with the phone. Just processing everything, I said carefully, trying to understand. Understanding isn't always a good thing, Bella. His thumbs stroked my cheeks, a gesture that once meant love, but now felt like a threat. Sometimes it's better to just trust, to let go. As he left for work, I received a text on the burner phone. Urgent. Meet now. Same park, duck pond. What you copied last night. There's more to this than we thought. I stared at the message, remembering the email about Rachel, wondering how deep this rabbit hole went and if I'd find my way back out. But as I grabbed my keys, David called. Forgot to mention, I'm having lunch with your sister today. Thought we could clear the air about some business matters. My blood ran cold. Rachel, the blackmail photos, the containment protocol. Don't, I blurted. I mean, let me join you. I've been meaning to catch up with her too. Sorry, Bella. This needs to be a private conversation. Business, you understand. I'll give her your love. The line went dead, leaving me standing in my perfect suburban kitchen, realizing I had less than 4 hours to choose between betraying my husband to the FBI or saving my sister from whatever containment protocol meant. The burner phone buzzed again. Where are you? Time sensitive. And then a text from Rachel. Hey, sis. Weird request. David asked to meet for lunch. Says it's urgent. Should I be worried? I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window. At the woman my children had watched cover a bruise just days ago, and made my decision. Sometimes protecting the ones you love means choosing which ones you can save first. I just prayed I was choosing right. I made 3 calls in rapid succession as I ran to my car. First, to Rachel. Whatever you do, don't meet David for lunch. Family emergency. I'll explain later. Second, to the children's school, arranging for them to stay in after-school care, somewhere safe, somewhere David couldn't reach them easily. Third, to David's office, putting on my best distressed wife voice. Honey, Rachel just called. Mom's had a fall. She's heading to the hospital now. His response was immediate. I'll cancel lunch, come pick you up. No, I said too quickly, then forced my voice to soften. No, you have that important Carter meeting. I'll keep you updated. The lies felt bitter on my tongue, but I was learning that sometimes survival meant becoming someone you never thought you'd be. I made it to the park in record time, my hands shaking as I parked. Sarah was already at the duck pond, feeding birds with practiced nonchalance. As I approached, she spoke without looking at me. The files you copied last night. They're worse than we thought. David isn't just running a Ponzi scheme. He's using his investment firm to launder money for a human trafficking ring. The world tilted sideways. What? Those business trips to Miami? They're not just for meeting clients. We've linked several shell companies to properties used for trafficking operations. Young women brought in through false job offers, promised modeling careers or hospitality work. Their families invest what little they have through David's firm, thinking it's part of securing their daughter's future. Instead, I lost my breakfast in the nearby bushes, barely making it in time. Sarah waited patiently, keeping watch. The Carter account. I gasped when I could speak again. He just closed it, said it was his biggest commission yet. Sarah's face hardened. Mrs. Carter's granddaughter disappeared 3 months ago. Supposedly took a modeling job in Miami. Oh, God. I remembered Mrs. Carter at our last neighborhood barbecue, showing photos of her granddaughter. Proud. Hopeful. We have to stop them. We will. But Catherine, there's more. The email you found about your sister? The containment protocol isn't just blackmail. The last person who asked too many questions about the trading patterns had a fatal car accident. Brake lines cut. My phone buzzed. Rachel. Catherine, David's here at my office. Says mom's fine. No hospital. What's going on? My heart stopped. He's with her now. Oh God, he's with her right now. Sarah was already moving. Address? Montgomery Investment Group, 442 Madison Avenue, 15th floor. I have agents in the area. They'll contain the situation. But Catherine, listen to me carefully. You need to get somewhere safe. Now. If David knows you warned her... My phone buzzed again. David. You lied to me, Bella. We talked about lying. Then Rachel. He's acting weird. Locked the door to my office. Says we need to have a family discussion. Sarah was calling for backup, but I was already running to my car. My sister. My protector since we were little. The one who'd taught me to ride a bike. Who'd held me through my first heartbreak. Who'd been maid of honor at my wedding to the man who might now be planning to kill her. Catherine, wait! Sarah called after me. We'll handle this. But I couldn't wait. Because while Sarah saw a case, an investigation, I saw my big sister. And I'd rather die than let David hurt another person I loved. I drove like a woman possessed, running red lights, cutting through traffic. My phone kept buzzing. I didn't look at it. Couldn't look at it. 15 minutes in Manhattan traffic felt like 15 years. When I reached Rachel's building, I did something I'd seen in an old movie. I pulled the fire alarm. As people began evacuating, I slipped inside, taking the stairs because I couldn't trust the elevator. 15 flights up, muscles burning, fear driving me forward. I heard them before I saw them. Rachel's voice, sharp with anger. You're insane. I'm calling the police. David's laugh, the one I'd grown to fear. With what phone, sweetheart? And who would believe you? The hysterical woman making wild accusations about her successful brother-in-law. I reached the floor, gasping for breath. Through the glass wall of Rachel's corner office, I could see them. Rachel backed against her desk, David blocking the door. His back was to me. What happened next felt like slow motion. I saw Rachel's eyes widen as she spotted me. Saw David start to turn. Saw the letter opener in his hand catch the fluorescent light. And then I did something that the old Catherine, the perfect wife and mother, would never have done. I swung my handbag, heavy with the laptop I'd grabbed from David's office last night while he slept. With every ounce of strength I possessed, it connected with the back of his head just as he was turning. He stumbled, the letter opener clattering to the floor. Rachel moved fast, years of kickboxing classes paying off as she vaulted over her desk and past him. I grabbed her hand and we ran. Behind us, David's voice echoed down the hallway. You have no idea what you've done. Neither of you will be safe. Not ever. We took the stairs down. Emergence lights flashing from the fire alarm, the sound of sirens growing closer. When we burst out onto Madison Avenue, Sarah was there with a team of agents. They moved past us, heading up to Rachel's office. But David was already gone. Rachel turned to me, shaking. Catherine, what the hell is going on? The things he was saying about his business, about girls in Miami. I hugged her tight, breathing in her familiar perfume. It's a long story. And you're not going to like most of it. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. You should have trusted me to handle things, Bella. Now I have to take care of both my girls. But first, maybe I should visit our children at their after-school program? Show them what happens when mommy breaks daddy's trust? Sarah read the message over my shoulder and immediately began barking orders into her radio. But I wasn't listening anymore, because in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. The only way to truly protect my children was to stop running from David and start hunting him instead. The question was, could I become dangerous enough to catch a monster without becoming one myself? Behind me, I heard Rachel gasp. She was looking at her computer, which she'd managed to grab in our escape. Catherine, I think I found something. About David's first wife. The one who supposedly died in that car accident 5 years ago? She's alive. And you're never going to believe where she is. I've never driven so fast in my life. Sarah had sent agents to the children's after-school program, but I needed to see them with my own eyes. Rachel was beside me in the passenger seat, still pulling up documents on her tablet. Jennifer Reeves, she read, her voice tight with tension. That was her name before she married David. Graduated top of her class from Columbia Business School, worked at Goldman Sachs. Then she married David and suddenly stopped working. Sound familiar? It did. The same thing had happened to me. David's subtle suggestions that a wife shouldn't need to work, that he could provide everything I needed. The slow isolation that I'd mistaken for protection. The car accident was staged, Rachel continued. She's been living under an assumed name in witness protection. Catherine. She tried to expose him 5 years ago. Had evidence of everything. The trafficking, the money laundering. But nobody believed her. They all thought she was just a bitter ex-wife having a mental breakdown. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Where is she now? That's the thing. According to these records, she's been working as a counselor at a women's shelter in Boston. The same shelter where 3 trafficking victims were recently found. My phone rang through the car's speaker. Sarah. We've got eyes on the children. They're safe. But Catherine, David's gone dark. His phones are off. Credit cards haven't been used. He's running. Or hunting, I said, remembering the look in his eyes when he'd struck me. What about the first wife? Jennifer? A pause. How did you... Never mind. Yes, we know about her. She's been helping us build the case for years, but we could never get enough evidence. Until now. We pulled up to the after-school program just as a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. My heart stopped until I saw Sarah step out, followed by 2 agents. Inside, Emma and Tyler were sitting in the activity room, surrounded by other children, but looking somehow alone. When they saw me, their faces crumpled with relief. Mom! Emma ran into my arms while Tyler hung back, trying to be brave but his lower lip trembling. We need to get them somewhere safe, Sarah said. We have a safe house ready. But before we could move, my phone buzzed with a text from another unknown number. Hello, Catherine. This is Jennifer. I think it's time we met. I'm closer than you think. I looked up and saw her, the woman from the park bench, still in her tennis clothes. She stood in the doorway of the after-school program, looking exactly like what she was pretending to be, just another mom picking up her kids. I've been watching you, she said quietly as she approached. Making sure you didn't make the same mistakes I did. But now we're out of time. David has a backup plan. He always has a backup plan. The children huddled closer to me. Jennifer, if that was really her name, looked at them with a mixture of sadness and determination. There's something you need to see, she said, pulling out her phone. Something I've been saving for the right moment. David has a pattern. With me, with you, with all of it. Watch. The video showed David in his office, speaking to someone off camera. The timestamp was from 3 years ago. It's a simple choice, he was saying. Either your daughter takes the modeling job in Miami, or your entire family loses everything. I own your mortgage, your business loans, everything. One signature and it all goes away. My stomach lurched as I recognized the person he was speaking to, Mrs. Carter's son-in-law. That's not the worst part, Jennifer said. Keep watching. The video continued, showing a series of meetings, each following the same pattern. Desperate families, forced choices. David playing both savior and destroyer. But it was the last clip that made my blood run cold. It showed David in a restaurant, meeting with someone I recognized. My father, 2 weeks before his sudden heart attack last year. "No," I whispered. "Yes," Jennifer said. "Your father found out something he shouldn't have. David doesn't just destroy lives, Catherine. He ends them when he has to." Rachel grabbed my arm. "The medical examiner. He owed David money. The heart attack could have been induced," Jennifer finished. "I tried to warn your father. That's why I came out of hiding. But I was too late. Sarah was already on her phone, calling in teams, ordering exhumations, but I barely heard her. Because everything suddenly made horrible sense. Dad's desperate attempts to tell me something in those final weeks. David's insistence on handling all the funeral arrangements. The way he'd kept me sedated with anti-anxiety medication through most of it. I looked at my children, really looked at them. Emma had David's eyes. Tyler had his chin. What else had they inherited? What else would they have to overcome? "There's more," Jennifer said. "But we can't talk here. David has people everywhere. The woman at the front desk? She's been taking pictures of us for the last 5 minutes." Sure enough, the receptionist was typing rapidly on her phone, trying to look casual and failing. "The safe house," Sarah decided. "Now, all of you." We moved quickly, loading the children into Sarah's SUV while her agents secured the perimeter. But as we pulled away, I saw a familiar car turn onto the street. David's silver Mercedes. "He's here," I said. But Jennifer was already one step ahead, pulling out a small tracking device. "Remote starter," she explained. "He installed them in all his vehicles. Old habits from his cocaine running days in college. If I can just—" David's Mercedes suddenly roared to life, engine revving. Through the windshield, I could see his face. That familiar mix of rage and calculation. He had to choose, chase us or deal with his car before it attracted attention. We turned the corner just as the Mercedes' alarm system began wailing. "That'll keep him busy for a minute," Jennifer said. "But Catherine, listen to me carefully. What you found in those files last night, it's only the beginning. David isn't just working with traffickers, he's working with people who make traffickers look like saints. And they're not going to let any of us just walk away." My phone buzzed one final time. "David, you want to play games, Bella? Fine. Let me tell you about the game I played with your father. How long he took to die. How he begged at the end. Shall we play that game with our children?" I deleted the message, then turned off my phone. Looking at my children in the back seat, holding hands and trying not to cry, I made a decision. I was done being afraid. Done being a victim. David wanted to play games? Fine. Let's play. But first, I needed to hear what Jennifer knew. Because if David had murdered my father, if he was truly capable of that level of evil, then this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice. What I didn't know then was that Jennifer's story would change everything I thought I knew about David, about my marriage, about the night my father died, and about the true meaning of revenge. The safe house was actually a modest apartment in Queens, deliberately unremarkable. As FBI agents swept the perimeter, Jennifer sat at the small kitchen table, her tennis disguise discarded for simple jeans and a sweater. Emma and Tyler were in the bedroom with Rachel, exhausted from the day's events, while Sarah coordinated with her team in the living room. "I met David 12 years ago," Jennifer began, her fingers tracing the rim of her untouched coffee cup. "Right after you rejected his first proposal." I stared at her. "What?" "You were his second choice, Catherine. He'd been watching both of us, young professionals with family connections to the financial industry. When I accepted his proposal, you went on to date Michael Stevens." The name hit me like a physical blow. Michael. My first real love, who died in a mugging gone wrong just weeks before he was planning to propose. "That mugging," Jennifer said softly, reading my expression. "It wasn't random." "No." I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "No. They caught the guy. He confessed. A homeless man with severe mental illness who died in prison 3 months later. Very convenient." Jennifer pulled out a folder. "This is why I've been in hiding all these years. Not just because of what David did to me, but because of what I found out about you. About Michael." With trembling hands, I opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos. Michael and me on dates, at parks, outside my apartment. Mixed in were photos of the supposed mugger, meeting with someone whose face was always just out of frame. But in one photo, I caught a glimpse of a familiar silver watch. David's watch. A graduation gift from his father. David had Michael killed, Jennifer continued, then waited 6 months before running into you at that charity gala. He'd planned it all, just like he planned my accident when I got too close to the truth. The room spun. I gripped the table to steady myself. Why? Why go to all that trouble? Because of your father's position on the Federal Reserve Board. Because of your sister's firm. David doesn't just want money. He wants power, control. He uses people like chess pieces, moving them into position years before he needs them. Sarah joined us at the table, her face grim. We've confirmed Jennifer's story. The man who confessed to Michael's murder had regular deposits made to an offshore account. The money traced back to one of David's shell companies. But that's not why I came out of hiding now, Jennifer said. It's about your father. The night he died, he called me. My head snapped up. What? He'd figured out what David was doing. Not just the Ponzi scheme or the trafficking, but something bigger. He found evidence that David's operation was just one part of a larger network. Judges, politicians, bankers, all compromised, all connected. He wanted to go to the FBI, but he needed proof. The heart attack, I whispered. Jennifer nodded. David found out. Your father didn't die right away. They made it slow, made it look natural. But first, they wanted to know who else knew, who he'd told. I remembered those final days in the hospital, how David had insisted on being there constantly, controlling who could visit, how my father had seemed afraid every time David entered the room. The proof, Sarah said. Did your father find it? Yes. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. He hid it where he knew David would never look. In his love letters to Catherine's mother. My mother had died when I was young. Dad had kept all their letters, and when he died, David has them. He cleared out Dad's house himself. No. Jennifer smiled for the first time. He has some letters, but your father told me about the real ones. The ones he kept in a safety deposit box. Box number 2311 at First National, under your mother's maiden name. Sarah was already moving, calling her team, but I barely heard her. Because another memory was surfacing. David's insistence that we go through Dad's papers right after the funeral. His growing frustration as he searched. His rage when he couldn't find what he was looking for. My phone buzzed. A new number. Missing your father, Bella? He cried at the end. Begged for his life. Want to know his last words? Then another. The children are so beautiful when they sleep. Tyler snores just like you do. My blood ran cold. I showed the messages to Sarah, who immediately got on her radio. But Jennifer grabbed my arm. He's bluffing, she said. I have people watching the kids. He's trying to make you panic, make you run to them. It's what he does. Uses love against you. It's how he controls everyone. We need to end this, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Not just stop him, but bring down everyone he's working with. For Michael, for my father, for all the families he's destroyed. Jennifer nodded. That's why I'm here. The letters in your father's safety deposit box. They're not just love letters. He encoded evidence in them. Account numbers, names, dates. Everything needed to expose the entire network. But you need me to access the box, I realized. Because I'm the only one who would know my mother's maiden name. Yes, but Catherine. Jennifer's eyes were intense. Once we do this, there's no going back. These people, they'll come after all of us. You need to be sure. I thought of Michael, of the future we should have had, of my father, dying alone and afraid, of Emma and Tyler, growing up in the shadow of a monster, of all the other families, all the other victims. I'm sure, I said, but we do this my way, because David's not just going to expose his network, he's going to confess to everything. How? Sarah asked. He's too smart to get caught, too careful. I smiled, and for the first time, I felt something of David in my expression, that same calculating coldness, because I know his weakness. The same weakness that made him kill Michael, that made him choose me, that makes him stalk our children now. His need for control, Jennifer understood. Exactly. He'd rather die than lose control of his narrative. So we're going to give him a choice. Confess on his own terms, or watch as we destroy not just his empire, but his entire legacy, including his children. Catherine, Sarah warned, if you're suggesting using your children as bait. No, I said firmly. I'm suggesting we use his greatest fear against him. The fear that his own children will know him for what he really is. And thanks to you, Jennifer, thanks to my father's foresight, we have proof of everything. My phone buzzed again. David. One last chance, Bella. Come home. All is forgiven. Or should I tell the children about their grandfather's last moments? I showed the message to Jennifer and Sarah. See? He's already doing exactly what we need, trying to control the story. So let's give him a story. Let's give him the performance of his life. What I didn't tell them was the rest of my plan. Because while David was focused on maintaining control, on protecting his narrative, I would be dismantling something far more precious to him, his future. Starting with the offshore accounts Jennifer had helped me locate, the ones even Sarah didn't know about yet. David had taught me well over the years, about power, about patience, about revenge. Now it was time to show him just how well I'd learned those lessons. As if reading my thoughts, Jennifer reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Just remember, becoming like him to destroy him is exactly what he would want, I finished. Don't worry, this isn't about revenge anymore. This is about justice and the truth. But as we began planning our next moves, I couldn't help but wonder, was there really a difference? And more importantly, could I walk the line between justice and vengeance without losing myself in the process? What I didn't know then was that David had one final secret, one that would change everything. But first we had to spring our trap, and hope that my father's evidence would be enough to not just catch a monster, but to slay him once and for all. The safety deposit box key felt heavy in my hand as I walked into First National Bank. Sarah's agents were positioned throughout the building, dressed as customers and staff. Jennifer waited in a car outside, while Rachel stayed at the safe house with the children. Everything was in place. Box 2311, please, I told the clerk, presenting my ID and my mother's maiden name, Elizabeth Blackwood. As we walked into the vault, my heart pounded so hard I was sure the clerk could hear it. The box contained exactly what we expected. A stack of old letters, yellowed with age, tied with a faded blue ribbon, but mixed in with my father's familiar handwriting were pages of numbers, names, dates, all carefully encoded within what looked like love letters to my mother. What I didn't expect was the separate envelope addressed to me, in my father's handwriting. For Catherine, when the truth comes out. My hands trembled as I opened it. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, then I'm dead, and you've finally discovered the truth about David. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you from him. I tried to warn you all those years ago about Michael, but David's threats against you and Rachel kept me silent. But there's something else you need to know. Something I discovered just before David's men came for me. It's about your mother's death 25 years ago. I had to stop reading, my vision blurring with tears. Mom's car accident had happened when I was 10. Black ice on a mountain road, they'd said. A tragic accident. Forcing myself to continue. The accident wasn't an accident. David was there. Not as the man you know now, but as a teenager. His father was driving the car that forced your mother off the road. It was their first cover-up, their first taste of how power could erase consequences. I didn't know this when David came into your life. By the time I discovered the connection, he had already woven his web around our family. But now you know the whole truth. David didn't choose you by chance. He's been orchestrating this since you were a child, playing a game so long and cruel it's almost impossible to comprehend. The evidence in these letters will destroy him and everyone who helped him. Use it wisely. And Catherine, remember that you are your mother's daughter. She was the strongest person I ever knew. That strength is in you too. All my love, Dad. I sat heavily in one of the vault's chairs, the letters clutched to my chest. Sarah's voice came through my hidden earpiece. Catherine, Everything okay? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. David. Found what you're looking for, Bella? Did Daddy's little letter surprise you? Come home. Let me explain everything. Then another. After all, we're connected by more than just marriage. We're connected by blood, by death, by destiny. A chill ran down my spine as another memory surfaced. David, at our first meeting, saying he felt like he'd known me forever, because he had. He'd been watching me, waiting, planning, since I was a child. Catherine? Sarah again. David's car just pulled up outside. Jennifer's voice cut in. Don't let him bait you. This is what he wants, to get you emotional, to make you sloppy. But something else was clicking into place. The accident wasn't just about my mother, was it? I spoke quietly into my earpiece. David's father died in prison 2 years ago. Heart attack, just like Dad. Someone made sure he couldn't talk. Focus, Sarah urged. Stick to the plan. But I was already moving, tucking the letters into my bag and heading for the bank's entrance. Because suddenly I understood. This wasn't just about power or control. This was about legacy. About a twisted kind of inheritance passed from father to son. David stood by his car, impeccable in his business suit, looking for all the world like a concerned husband, not like a man who'd orchestrated decades of destruction. Hello, Bella, he said softly. Ready to hear the whole story? About how you and your father murdered my mother? About how you've been playing me since I was a child? He smiled, that same charming smile that had once made me feel safe. Everything I did for us, to bring us together, to fulfill what our fathers started. What are you talking about? Your mother and my father were in love once. Did you know that? Before she chose your father instead. Everything, the accident, Michael, all of it, was about correcting that mistake, about bringing our families together the way they were meant to be. I felt sick. You're insane. I'm devoted, he corrected. To you. To our children. To the destiny our parents could have had. He held out his hand. Come home, Catherine. Help me finish what they started. Through my earpiece, I could hear Sarah's team moving into position. Jennifer was warning me to stick to the plan. But 25 years of manipulation, of carefully orchestrated tragedy, were crystallizing into a single, terrible moment of clarity. You know what the funny thing is? I said, taking a step toward him. You were so focused on fulfilling your father's legacy that you never noticed something crucial. Oh? His smile wavered slightly. I'm not just my mother's daughter. I'm my father's daughter too. And he left a legacy of his own. I pulled out my phone, showing him the screen. A live stream of his offshore accounts being drained, of evidence being sent to every major news outlet, of his carefully constructed empire crumbling in real time. You taught me well, David, about power, about control, about patience. I met his eyes. The only thing you forgot to teach me was mercy. His face contorted with rage as he reached for me. But this time, I was ready. This time, I wasn't his victim. This time, I was my mother's daughter. What happened next would change everything. Not just for our family, but for every life David had touched in his decades-long game of power and revenge. But first, he had one final secret to reveal. One that would test not just my strength, but my very understanding of justice and redemption. David lunged for me, his composure finally shattering like a mask falling away. But this time, when his hand reached for me, I didn't flinch. I didn't run. I stood my ground, my mother's strength flowing through me, my father's wisdom guiding me. FBI, freeze! Sarah's voice rang out as agents emerged from every direction. David's hand stopped inches from my face. You really think this changes anything? He snarled. I still win. Because now our children will grow up knowing exactly what kind of people their parents are? No, I said calmly. They'll grow up knowing exactly what kind of person their mother is. Someone who stood up to a monster. Someone who chose truth over fear. Someone who broke the cycle of violence you and your father created. His laugh was hollow. You want truth, Bella? Here's your final truth. Your precious father? He wasn't as innocent as you think. He knew about the trafficking. He profited from it. Those offshore accounts you're so proudly draining? Half that money was his. I smiled, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker in David's eyes. I know, I said quietly. Dad told me everything in his letter. How you blackmailed him. How you threatened Rachel and me until he had no choice but to comply. How he spent years gathering evidence, building a case, trying to protect us the only way he could. Then you know you're no better than me, David spat. Using that same dirty money to destroy me. Wrong again. I held up my phone. The money's not being drained into my accounts. It's being returned to your victims. Every penny, traced and restored. Dad left instructions for everything. Account numbers, transaction histories, all of it. He died making sure justice would be served. Sarah stepped forward with handcuffs as David's face transformed with rage. You think this is justice? I protected you. I gave you everything. You gave me chains and called them jewelry. You gave me fear and called it love. You gave me control and called it protection. I took a step closer, looking into the eyes of the man I'd once loved. But you gave me something else too. Something you didn't intend. The strength to stand up to men like you. That's when he played his final card. Tell her, he called out to Jennifer, who had emerged from her surveillance position. Tell her what you really know about her mother's death. Jennifer met my eyes. I already did, Catherine. Last night, while you were sleeping. Because you deserve to know the whole truth before this moment. My breath caught. What truth? Your mother. Jennifer's voice was gentle. She didn't die instantly in that crash. She lived long enough to leave a message. A message David's father thought he destroyed. But I found it years ago in his things. She pulled out an old, crumpled piece of paper. She wrote it in her own blood. With trembling hands, I took the paper. On it, in faded red-brown letters, were 4 words. Catherine, be your own light. Something broke inside me. Not in the shattering way David had tried to break me, but in the way a seed breaks through its shell to reach the sun. You see? David's voice was triumphant. Even in death, she tied us together. Her blood quite literally connecting us forever. No, I said, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. She wasn't tying me to you. She was setting me free from men like you. Be your own light. Not someone else's reflection. Not someone else's possession. My own light. As the agents led him away, David called out one last time. The children will hate you for this. But Tyler's voice rang out from behind me. No, we won't. I whirled around to find my children standing there with Rachel. Against the plan, against all instructions, but exactly what I needed in that moment. We saw everything, Mom, Tyler said. We followed you. I needed to see you fight back. Emma ran to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Did Grandma really write that note? She did, sweetheart. I held them both close, breathing in the future instead of the past. She gave me the greatest gift she could, the courage to be myself. Over their heads, I watched David being placed in the FBI vehicle. Our eyes met one final time through the window. In his, I saw the same calculation, the same manipulation that had fooled me for so long. But this time, I saw something else too. Fear. Not of prison or punishment, but of irrelevance. Because in the end, the man who had spent his life controlling others had finally lost control of his own story. Jennifer and Sarah approached as the car drove away. It's over, Sarah said. We've already arrested 12 members of the trafficking ring, and with your father's evidence, we'll get the rest. The victims will get justice, and their families will get their money back. And the children? I asked. What do I tell them about who their father really is? Tell them the truth, Jennifer said. That hurt doesn't have to become hatred. That survival doesn't have to mean becoming like the person who hurt you. Tell them their grandmother's story, and their grandfather's courage, and mostly, tell them their mother's journey. Later that night, as my children slept safely in the FBI safe house, I sat down to write. Not for evidence or justice this time, but for healing. For legacy. Dear Emma and Tyler, I began. There's a story you need to know. It's about love and lies, about power and freedom, about the choice we all have to break cycles of pain. It's about your grandmother, who died protecting the light inside me. About your grandfather, who died making sure the truth would survive. about your father, who chose darkness, and about your mother, who chose to be her own light instead. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart stuttered, thinking it was David somehow reaching out from his cell. But it was a different message entirely. Found this in your father's things. Thought you should have it. Detective Martinez. Attached was a photo of a young woman holding a baby, her smile radiant and free. My mother, holding me, in a moment before tragedy struck. Before David's father destroyed our family's first chapter. But he hadn't destroyed our story. He hadn't destroyed me. Looking at my sleeping children, I understood finally what my mother's message truly meant. Being your own light doesn't mean burning alone. It means shining bright enough to help others find their way out of darkness. The sun was rising as I finished writing, its light spilling through the windows like hope made visible. In the next room, I could hear Emma stirring, Tyler's quiet murmur. A new day, a new chapter, a new legacy. Not of violence or control, but of truth and courage. Not of fear, but of freedom. And somewhere, I like to think, my mother was smiling, because her daughter had finally stepped into her own light.